Let's dive right into this explainer. Our Earth's oceans? They're basically one massive, continuous stream of data. We're taking a macro to micro tour today. We'll start by looking at the global ocean as a whole, and then we're going to descend into the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian, the Southern, and finally, the Arctic basins. Section 1. The global ocean. One connected system. You know, when you look at Earth from space, it's pretty obvious why we call it the blue planet. We've got this single, massive, continuous body of salt water, and all its parts freely exchange with one another. 71% of the Earth's surface is totally covered in water, leaving just a measly 29% for land. And this one interconnected system, it holds a staggering 97% of literally all the water on our planet. The sheer mass behind the global ocean is just mind-boggling. We're talking about almost 362 million square kilometers of coverage. For volume, picture over 1.3 billion cubic kilometers of water, dropping down to an average depth of 3,688 meters. And get this, if you decided to walk the entire oceanic coastline, you'd be trekking for over 377,000 kilometers. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, this single body of water is quite literally the planet's lungs. It kicks off marine photosynthesis, which actually generates roughly 70% of the oxygen we breathe. On top of that, it absorbs heat to regulate our global climate, it totally drives the water cycle, and on an economic level, it carries over 90% of all international trade through global shipping routes. Okay, moving on to Section 2, the Pacific Ocean, the largest basin. Bordered by Asia, Australia, and the Americas, the Pacific is an absolute giant. It makes up 46.6% of the global ocean. That's over 168 million square kilometers. To put that into perspective for you, the Pacific Ocean actually has more surface area than all of Earth's land masses combined. It's just huge. And it's not just the widest, it's also the deepest. The Pacific is home to the Challenger Deep, down in the Mariana Trench. This is the absolute deepest known point on Earth, plunging over 11,000 meters down into the dark. Think about it this way. That drop is actually deeper than Mount Everest is tall. No way, right? Now, physically, the Pacific is defined by extreme geological violence. It is ringed by what we call the Ring of Fire. This is a massive tectonic belt packing 452 active volcanoes. And because of all that intense, continuous tectonic activity, an unbelievable 90% of the world's earthquakes and 90% of its tsunamis are generated right here in this basin. All right, Section 3, the Atlantic Ocean, the S-shaped sea. Sitting right between the Americas, Europe, and Africa, the Atlantic makes up 23.5% of the global ocean. It actually gets its name from the Greek Titan Atlas. And with its distinct S-shape, it serves as this massive historical geographic divider, literally separating what was called the Old World of Europe, Africa, and Asia from the New World of the Americas. Over the centuries, thousands of ships have crossed it, and, well, thousands lie scattered on its floor today, including, of course, the famous Titanic. But beneath its surface lies an absolute record breaker, the Mid-Oceanic Ridge. We're talking about the longest mountain range on Earth, stretching 56,000 kilometers, and it is entirely underwater. If you somehow managed to stretch that mountain range out in a perfectly straight line, it would easily reach all the way around the entire globe. Next up, Section 4, the Indian Ocean, the warmest ocean. Bounded by Africa, Southern Asia, and Australia, the Indian Ocean is incredibly vital, connecting approximately 1/3 of the world's human population. But the data shows something really interesting. This is the warmest of all the oceans. And that high heat actually makes it tough for phytoplankton to grow. Since phytoplankton is a totally crucial marine food source, this temperature factor fundamentally impacts the broader marine food web across the whole region. But despite those heat challenges, it's still the primary breeding ground for humpback whales. However, the ecosystem here faces some really severe ecological threats. Because such a large percentage of global oil pumping happens here, these waters are heavily threatened by oil spills, unregulated agricultural runoff, and pollutants. All of this is seriously jeopardizing a vast, rich habitat. Let's head south for Section 5, the Southern Ocean, the coldest waters. Wrapping completely around the frozen continent of Antarctica, these waters are violently cold, deep, dark blue, and constantly churned up by strong winds. But guess what? they harbor some truly incredible, extreme adapted fauna. This environment is home to colossal squids, orcas, blue whales, seals, and the world's largest penguin species, the emperor penguin, which actually lives and breeds directly on the ice. It's the fourth largest basin, and kind of surprisingly, it was only officially recognized as a distinct ocean by international authorities recently, in the year 2000. Now, the Southern Ocean is completely defined by its massive icebergs. Some of these things are literally hundreds of meters high, and you have to think of these icebergs as huge floating reservoirs. They hold enough fresh water, locked right there in the ice, to meet the needs of absolutely everyone on Earth for several months. Finally, we reach the top of the world with Section 6, the Arctic Ocean, the northernmost waters. Sitting right smack at the North Pole and taking up just 4.3% of the global ocean surface area, this is the smallest of all the oceanic basins. It gets its name from Arctos, the Greek word for bear. But it stands out not just because of its tiny area, but because of its depth. It is drastically shallower than the rest of the oceanic system, averaging only 1,205 meters deep. Remember, the global ocean average is a much deeper 3,688 meters. Our continuous stream of data ends here in a world of extreme seasonal shifts. During the winter, this ocean is almost entirely covered with ice. And get this, between 10,000 and 50,000 icebergs form here every single year. Then, during the summer months, half of all that surface ice melts right back into open ocean water. This harsh, ever-changing environment serves as the primary hunting territory for polar bears, snowy owls, and Arctic foxes. So that leaves us with this final, crazy thought regarding our blue planet. We know that between 50 to 80% of all life on Earth lives in these waters, yet an estimated 80% of the ocean remains completely unmapped and unexplored. Considering how much of these 5 massive basins remains totally unseen, what else is waiting down there in the dark? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Don't forget to subscribe and follow for more.